Book 4, Part 2 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Metamorphoses by Publius Ovidius Naso. Translated by Brooks Moore, Book 4, Part 2. The Cytherean Venus brooded on the sun's betrayal of her stolen joys, and thought to torture him in passion's pains and requital for the pain he caused. Son of Hyperion, what avails thy light? What is the profit of thy glowing heat? Lo, thou whose flames have parched in numerous lands, thyself art burning with another flame. And thou, whose orb should joy the universe, art gazing only on Leucothia's charms. Thy glorious eye on one fair maiden is fixed, forgetting all besides. Too early thou art rising from thy bed of orient skies, too late thy setting in the western waves, so taking time to gaze upon thy love, thy frenzy lengthens out the wintry hour. And often thou art darkened in eclipse, dark shadows of this trouble in thy mind, unwonted aspect, casting men perplexed in abject terror. Pale thou art, though not betwixt thee and the earth the shadowous moon bedims thy devious way. Thy passion gives to grief thy countenance, for her thy heart alone is grieving. Clymene and Rhodos and Persa, mother of deluding Circe, are all forgotten for thy doting hope. Even Clytie, who is yearning for thy love, no more can charm thee, thou art so fordone. Leucothea is the cause of many tears. Leucothea, daughter of Eurynome, most beauteous matron of Arabia's strand, where spicy odours blow. Eurynome, in youthful prime, excelled her mother's grace, and, save her daughter, all excelled besides. Leucothia's father, Orchamus, was king where Achaneme's whilom held the sway, and Orchamus from ancient Belus' death might count his reign the 7th in descent. The dark night pastures of Apollo's, Sol's, steeds are hid below the western skies, when there, and spent with toil, in lieu of nibbling herbs they take ambrosial food. It gives their limbs restoring strength and nourishes anew. Now, while these coursers eat celestial food and the night resumes his reign, the god appears disguised, unguessed, as old Eurynome to fair Leucothea, as she draws the threads all smoothly twisted from her spindle. There she sits, with twice 6 handmaids ranged around, and as the god beholds her at the door he kisses her, as if a child beloved and he her mother. And he spoke to her, "Let thy 12 handmaids leave us undisturbed, for I have things of close import to tell, and seemly from a mother to her child." So when they all withdrew, the god began, "Lo, I am he who measured the long year. I see all things, and through me the wide world may see all things. I am the glowing eye of the broad universe. Thou art to me the glory of the earth." Filled with alarm, from her relaxed fingers she let fall the distaff and the spindle, but, her fears so lovely in her beauty seemed, the god no longer brooked delay. He changed his form back to his wonted beauty, and resumed his bright celestial. Startled at the sight, the maid recoiled a space, but presently the glory of the god inspired her love, and all her timid doubts dissolved away. Without complaint she melted in his arms. So ardently the bright Apollo's soul loved, that Clytie, envious of Leucothia's joy, where evil none was known, a scandal made. And having published wide their secret love, Leucothia's father also heard the tale. Relentlessly and fierce his cruel hand buried his living daughter in the ground, who, while her arms implored the glowing sun, complained, "For love of thee my life is lost." And as she wailed, her father sowed her there. Hyperion's son began with piercing heat to scatter the loose sand, a way to open, that she might look with beauteous features forth. Too late, for smothered by the compact earth thou canst not lift thy drooping head. Alas, a lifeless corpse remains. No sadder sight, since Phaeton was blasted by the bolt, down hurled by Jove, had ever grieved the god who daily drives his winged steeds. In vain he strives with all the magic of his race to warm her limbs anew. The deed is done. What vantage gives his might if fate deny? He sprinkles fragrant nectar on her grave in lifeless course, and as he wills exclaims, "But naught shall hinder you to reach the skies!" At once the maiden's body, steeped in dews of nectar, sweet and odorous, dissolves and adds its fragrant juices to the earth. Slowly from this a sprout of frankincense takes root in rich soil, and bursting through the sandy hillock shows its top. No more to Clytie comes the author of Sweet Light, for though her love might make excuse of grief, and grief may plead to pardon jealous words, his heart disdains the schemist of his woe, and she who turns to sour the sweet of love, from that unhallowed moment pined away, envious and hating all her sister nymphs, day after day, and through the lonely nights, all unprotected from the chilly breeze, her hair dishevelled, tangled, unadorned, she sat unmoved upon the bare hard ground. 9 days the nymph was nourished by the dews, or haply by her own tears' bitter brine. All other nourishments was naught to her. She never raised herself from the bare ground, though on the god her gaze was ever fixed. She turned her features toward him as he moved. They say that after a while her limbs took root and fastened to the around. A pearly white overspread her countenance, that turned as pale and bloodless as the dead, but here and there a blushing tinge resolved in violent tint, and something like the blossom of that name, a flower, concealed her face. Although a root now holds her fast to earth, the heliotrope turns ever to the sun, as if to prove that all may change, and love through all remains. Thus was the story ended. All were charmed to hear recounted such mysterious deeds. While some were doubting whether such were true, others affirmed that to the living God is nothing to restrain their wondrous works, though surely of the gods immortal none accorded Bacchus even thought or place. When all had made an end of argument, they bade Alcithoe to take up the word. She, busily working on the pendant web, still shut the shuttle through the warp, and said, "The amours of the shepherd Daphnis, known to many of you, I shall not relate. The shepherd Daphnis of Mount Ida, who was turned to stone obdurate, for the nymph whose love he slighted, said the rivalry of love neglected rouses to revenge. Neither shall I relate the story told of Scython, double-sexed, who first was man, then also to a woman. So I pass the tale of Calmus turned to adamant, who reared almighty Jove from tender youth. So likewise to Curetes, whom the rain brought forth to life. Smilax and Crocus too, transpeciated into little flowers. All these I pass to tell a novel tale, which haply may resolve in pleasant thoughts. Learn how the fountain Salmacis became so infamous. Learn how it enervates and softens the limbs of those who chance to bathe. Although the fountain's properties are known, the cause is yet unknown. The Naiads nursed an infant son of Hermes. Surely his of Aphrodite gotten in the caves of Ida. For the child resembled both the god and the goddess, and his name was theirs. The years passed by, and when the boy had reached the limit of 3 lustrums, he forsook his native mountains, for he loved to roam through unimagined places by the banks of undiscovered rivers, and the joy of finding wonders made his labor light. Leaving Mount Ida, where his youth was spent, he reached the land of Lycia, and from thence the verge of Caria, where a pretty pool of soft translucent water may be seen. So clear the glistening bottom glads the eye, no barren sedge, no fenny reeds annoy, no rushes with their sharpened arrow points, but all around the edges of that pool the softest grass engirdles with its green. A nymph dwells there, unsuited to the chase, unskilled to bend the bow, slothful of foot, the only naiad in the world, unknown to rapid running Dian. Whensoever her naiad sisters pled in winged words, "Take up the javelin, sister Salmacis, take up the painted quiver, and unite your leisure with the action of the chase," she only scorned the javelin and the quiver, nor joined her leisure to the active chase. Rather she bathes her smooth and shapely limbs,